Welcome back to this week's episode of Friends of Kayla. We have a new friend on the show today, Daniel Snow, CEO, entrepreneur, founder. The guy does it all. So Daniel, welcome.
Thank you for having me, Kayla. Excited for the conversation today.
Yes, I'm very excited as well. And shout out to Annette. Your sister and I did go to Lafayette College together. So I'm really happy she was able to introduce us. And now you're a new friend as well. So excited you're here. You have such an interesting story, being like a nice Jewish boy that grew up in New Jersey, getting into the hip hop rap space, like very unique story that I just love to hear from you. What's your story?
Take some time, but I would say, well, I have an interesting story about how my entrepreneurial journey began, I guess you could say. Well, after I realized that I couldn't go to the NBA because I was, not big enough and tore both my ACLs in high school, I always my plan B was to become an entrepreneur. So I was the type of kid that always had that fire in me to create something myself. Maybe it was a combination of like not, being able to deal with authority figures, wanted to be in charge, maybe had that natural kind of leadership ability about me. And it was just something I really looked up to and admired entrepreneurs when I was a kid. I was like literally the kid on the school bus selling gum, always hustling, thinking about how I can create, playing video games, getting people together, being competitive. So I always had that kind of fire in me and that chip on my shoulder to prove something to the world. And I was in school to be a dentist. I was in the accelerated dental program. As many Jews can relate, I had three options on jobs. I could be a doctor, dentist, or lawyer. And I got into social media from a chance conversation I had in the gym of 2012. And my friend told me he was making $45 a week in the gym. So I left the gym, he told me he was making money on Twitter, made a Twitter account with the intentions of making $45 a week. And that's how I got started. And then to make a long story short, that led me into learning how to grow an audience on social media, to learning how to monetize it, which led me to creating a self-serve advertising platform in 2014 when I was still in college. We had thousands of people using the platform, like celebrities, people who had large followings, media companies, etc. Which then after that, created a portfolio of consumer brands because I learned how to essentially profitably send traffic to many things online. Through that, RapTV was kind of like in that kind of like around that time. I mentioned how I got started. So I still had these audiences. I was really good at growing audiences and communities on social media. I wanted to create a brand of it, not just a page. So that's how RapTV came about. Sold the portfolio of brands, launched an advertising agency. And then the list keeps going. But that's maybe a longer story.
So your life would totally look a lot different right now if you were a dentist, huh?
I think about that a lot because it goes to show how seemingly small decisions at the time can completely impact your life in huge ways and lives around you, right? Like if I didn't do that, hundreds of lives around me would have been different as well. So it's like, I think about that a lot, actually. It's pretty interesting.
So when you were, deciding whether or not to pursue dentistry, what was the conversation like with your parents, and what kind of upbringing actually did you have when it comes to not only like your faith, but just in general? Like what did your childhood look like?
I came from a household where I would say if it was anything but excellence, it was a failure, which, proved to work out really nicely. Me, my brother, and my sister all became really successful in our own right through schools and athletics, stuff like that. But that was the kind of mentality my parents had, and therefore maybe part of the mentality I had for myself for a very long time. I was raised in a kosher household. Okay. So my mom is still kosher, and it was out of respect for my mom. I was never kosher. Love my crab legs. My relationship with Judaism was always first off, very important to my family. Although, especially with someone who kind of has this relationship with authority, it's kind of like when you force something on someone, you kind of pull away and do the opposite. So I would say growing up, like my relationship with Judaism was more like out of respect for my parents and family, more than like understanding on a deeper level what is my actual relationship with God and Judaism and the religion. I was always extremely proud to be a Jew, not just a Jew, but the son of 2 Israeli Jews. And I would say like my identification with being Israeli, and an Israeli Jew, was a huge part of my identity, especially growing up in a town where I was always, up until after graduating college, I always felt like the outcast, like always the one person in the group on the sports team in the fraternity that was Jewish, made fun of for my religion. And I think that was part of the many things growing up that built this kind of chip on my shoulder, kind of like the story you tell yourself is like, I'm the outcast. I want to prove everyone wrong. Like I, feed off. And that was a part of things that like I fed off kind of people, isolating kind of in that sense. So, if anything, I think like it created a fire in me. It's kind of through that experience growing up, which is why it's so nice coming to Miami, where like so many people are Jewish for the first time. So many of my friends are Jewish for the first time. It's been a nice experience. But to go back to your question on how did my parents react when I didn't go to dental school, it was not well.
Yeah. Most Jewish parents would probably be like, oh, really? You want to start a social media company, a brand? Really?
Yeah.
We don't approve. And that was you were so early on into the social media space. So it's funny how now looking back, they're probably so thrilled that you ended up going against their advice.
Now they're proud, but back then they were extremely scared and fearful and not approving. There was many not very nice names being tossed around how much of a loser I'm going to be with the horrible decision I'm making to. Oh yeah, let's hear it. Like what? Just like, oh, you're going to be a loser. You're going to be homeless.
Homeless. Okay.
You're making the biggest regret of the worst decision of your life.
Wow. So how do you push through that? Your parents' disapproval.
Like I said, I think probably through sports and many of these other experiences throughout life, I feed off of people kind of doubting me. And I mentioned this chip on the shoulder. At this point in time, I had developed a massive chip on my shoulder. Like that was for sure my fire. And, that feeling of isolation, I kind of liked. I love that, because it's like you want to prove to everyone. And when you have belief in yourself, it was almost like comical to me that people were like didn't see and support. Honestly, I look back and I'm like, would I have been as successful if everyone supported me? I don't know, because I think I really fed off of the doubts at that point in my life. But yeah.
Do you feel like there's any truth to like delusion makes you successful? Like, do you feel like at any point maybe it was not yourself feeling delusional, but others around you being like, you're delusional, Daniel, what are you doing?
I absolutely do believe that great entrepreneurs are delusional. But at this point in my life, I don't think there was any delusion about it. I think there was enough data points to show that I was having a lot of success already at this point in my life. So much so where it's like to be a dentist would be a horrible decision. I just didn't share that piece of information with everyone. But yeah, I do think that like having a delusional amount of self-belief is incredibly important trait for an entrepreneur. There comes a point where it's like, you got to get off that hamster wheel though, because some people don't know when to do that. And that's where, things can go wrong. But I think it can be a positive tool, at least early on.
Yeah, no, I feel like that definitely aligns with a lot of entrepreneurial mindsets and people when they're thinking of starting a business. It's like you have to believe in yourself to no end, or no one else will believe in you. And part of that is probably delusion.
100%.
So let's go back to talking about what I would say is, being the token Jew. And I can relate to that too. Like growing up, I always, was the only Jew on my basketball team, was the only Jewish person in my friend group in high school. Like I didn't grow up in a Jewish area like at all. and, went to college. Like there were some Jews, but I didn't really feel connected to my Judaism until I graduated college. So pretty much later in life, like similar to you probably. But when you got into like your career, especially with RapTV and getting into like the hip hop rap culture, I imagine you were also the token Jew in that community as well. So that must have like also ignited some fire under you. But how was that, like working with people that probably had no idea like what a Jew even was?
So few things. Number one, although I founded RapTV, I was never like deep in the weeds of it because it was always kind of like a side project for me. And that ended up becoming a really big thing. But I wasn't like deep in I kind of always had a team running it. So I wasn't like identifying with that, like being on the ground, like, but surprisingly, there's a good amount of Jews that work in the rap music industry.
Yeah. Well, I guess we're always like the back end. We're always the ones running the show.
Yeah.
We're not the face of
So I would say like
game.
That, and I never really put myself out there and promoted myself as like the founder of RapTV. That was never part of, that was intentionally just not something that I felt like I needed to self-promote or use the platform to promote me as the founder. Some people do that where it's like they have especially a media company, they want to be the face of it. I had no desire to ever do that. Honestly, a lot of friends, like even the first person I ever advertised with RapTV, my friend Dylan, he's one of my best friends now today. He's Jewish. Honestly, there's a lot of people that work in the industry who also are Jewish. So I never felt that like token Jew kind of thing working in having this company.
Got it. Okay. I guess I was more thinking maybe you're working directly with some of the rappers and some of the artists, but like that obviously wasn't necessarily the case. But did you have a chance to meet some of your idols in the hip hop rap space throughout this career?
A cool, my favorite, I guess, experience I had was this guy took randomly one night. He's like, "Hey, you want to go to a private Drake show?" I was like, "Yeah, sure, why not in New York City?" And then after, he's like, "You want to have dinner with Drake?" I was like, "Yeah, why not? That'd be awesome." And he rented out Carbone, like just no one was there besides us, and like there was probably like 10 people there. His dad was there, Aziz Ansari was there, like a bunch of random people. And funny enough, he was super nice and welcoming and approachable. The funny thing was, I won't forget, this was like 2017. He didn't even know what RapTV was at the time. I had this shapewear brand, and he knew that. He knew my shapewear brand, not RapTV.
No way.
Yeah.
And RapTV was, well, obviously. It
wasn't what it was today, but it had millions of followers already at the time, for sure. It was already like the biggest, like, I don't know, thing on rap, whatever, for social media. So I was like, I was surprised he hadn't.
So Drake had no idea who you were, what it was.
But he's like, "Oh yeah, because I had this shapewear brand, and we hired like every, social media model, girl, influencer, whatever, all the reality stars to do these videos with it was like a strapless, backless push-up bra." So he's like, "I see all these girls on Instagram doing that all the time."
Oh my God, that's so funny.
So he knew that, not the rap brand, but that was like a cool experience for me because I'm a big Drake fan.
Yeah, no, so am I. Although I'm a little upset with Drake these days, I'm not going to lie. As a Jewish man, I get it. He has a big following, a huge platform. He doesn't want to get political, but I wish he would stick up for the Jews a little bit more. But, nonetheless, I'll take it up with Drake myself if I have the chance to do so. But, okay, so you mentioned a shapewear brand. So there were other brands or companies that you started outside of RapTV, but RapTV was the most successful, correct?
I guess RapTV is probably the most successful. I helped found a kids wellness brand called Haya, which I was heavily involved in kind of the first year, but that ended up becoming a pretty big thing. Shapewear brand, the agency, I think all of those did pretty well. So,
and at the age that you sold RapTV, like how old were you?
Oh, RapTV is not sold.
Oh, it's not?
There's a CEO that runs the company.
Oh.
So I'm just no longer involved in the day-to-day of it.
Okay.
CEO being not me.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
So what are you up to?
Agency was sold 2.5 years ago.
Okay.
Hyo was sold in December. Shapewear brand, a bunch of those brands were sold in 2019. So yeah, I took a year and a half off from work, traveled the world, had space for the first time, devoted a lot of that time to focusing on self-improvement and internally, where I was so externally motivated and externally driven for so long, right? So for the first time, I was able to get off the kind of hamster wheel and start and just, really think about my life, what I want, and be able to start thinking about how I want to design it, what I want it to look like, and all the other things that don't have any components to like work. But now this year, I want it to be a lot more intentional around how I'm spending my time. So the kind of focus of my year was finding things that give me energy. And so part of that was a podcast I started. Part of that was starting a new business. So I'm working on a new business that's going to hopefully launch in the next month, called Repriced. It's a kind of think about a price protection software in the travel industry. So starting out with flights and hotels, essentially we save people money when prices drop for what they already booked. I am involved in different companies as an advisor or mentor, and that keeps me pretty busy this year. So yeah,
that's really busy. Okay, I was just curious because I'm like, I feel like entrepreneurs, you could take a break, but like you don't stop. Like once you're an entrepreneur, it's like who you are, and you're just gonna keep creating more and more businesses. So I feel like that's kind of the wave you're on right now too.
There was definitely a time last year where I was like, I don't know if I ever want to work again. And ultimately I realized like I get fulfillment from working towards things, right? It doesn't have to be business. It could be many different things, but I think business is a good outlet to do that. And that's why kind of the year I set that intention, because I was like, oh, do I still enjoy working on businesses, in businesses? What's my why? Why am I doing this? Is it just to get validation? Is it because I want to make more money? So I'm still trying to figure it out, but yeah.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, like, how do you find purpose outside of the fulfillment of work?
I find fulfillment through helping others. That's why part of the part of the intentions I set for myself was advisory and mentorship, helping others in their business or just helping kids. I'm going to actually Prague next week for this mentorship program for underprivileged kids around the world. So that's really cool. So I also find a lot of purpose through community, not just being a part of community, but also building community. I love to bring people together, and I find fulfillment through that, connecting people and seeing people, make friends or whatever. And especially doing it in something that I love doing.
Are we talking about the beach workeds that happen once a week?
Beach workouts are part of it. It started there, but
let's talk about the beach
workouts, dinners. Now I'm like with my brother. I was like, oh, we could start this like DJ yacht series. I don't know. My mind's getting excited with all these different things.
What about a Shabbat dinner on a yacht? You guys should host that.
That sounds cool. I mean, it doesn't have to be on.
It doesn't have to be on a yacht.
Yeah, but I wanted to start hosting. I wanted to start hosting Shabbat dinners.
I think that would be great.
Yeah, I wanted to start. So like. Just hosting, getting people together. I would say just being of service to others and being able to impact them through my own experiences and skills, whatever, gives me fulfillment and purpose. So.
And it's so interesting. I was just thinking about it. You never brought up college, but I know you did go to college, right? In Jersey?
I went to college in Jersey, yeah.
Do you feel like your education impacted anything when it comes to you being a successful entrepreneur?
I don't think my education impacted my ability to be an entrepreneur at all, but I do think the social experiences allowed me to grow as a person during that time in my life. And I look back at college and I'm like, would I have just been, first off, there's no way, I didn't know what the hell I wanted to do at the age of 18. And certainly I didn't think I want to be a dentist, but I was like, all right, whatever, I'll do that. I definitely think college, at least for me, the best component of it in my life was the social experiences and the leadership experiences through all the different groups I was involved in and whatnot. I think I was able to mature a lot socially at that age. Just get a lot of new experiences living away from family and living amongst all your peers and whatnot during that time of my life. I mean, even the business I mentioned, I had all my friends working for me and everything. So it was a cool experience, but I don't think I was a biology major, like I mentioned. I don't think that had any impact on anything I've ever done.
Yeah. And like the ability to make money and hustle.
No, don't think so.
Yeah. I feel like that's a big question that I think about too, is like, what's the future of like a college education, and like, does it really matter? Because I think, especially coming from New York City, like people value higher education so much more than maybe a more entrepreneurial city like Miami. So it's been just really interesting being here and seeing the contrast in the two cities. Like the first question someone will ask you in New York is like, what do you do for work? And second question is like, where'd you go to college?
I absolutely despise that because they're just trying to size you up right away. Like anyone who leads with that, it's a little frustrating for me.
So what should you ask someone? Like,
get to know someone. It depends on the context, but it's like if I'm trying to get to know someone, I want to try to get to know them. I think those questions are very lazy questions when you're trying to get to know someone, because you're already sizing up to say like, okay, is this person worth spending my time with?
Yeah, like, are they good enough for me because of a name? Yeah. What
those questions are really signals, right? Like, okay, signal is, do you have a good job? Yes. Did you go to a good college? I don't think like people ask that with the intention of, did they get a good education? More so like, oh, it's just a good it's a signal depending on where you went to college.
Right.
And there's like, could be value there,
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. But I also, on the flip side, have met people in Miami that haven't even gotten a degree. Like, I don't think it matters what you did, where you went to school necessarily, but I think some women, at least, speaking for women here, want to know that a guy's educated in some capacity. Yeah. And that question does at least indicate that. I don't know. That's just my perspective. But that's really getting into dating, which I won't grill you on that in this podcast. Don't worry, Daniel.
We can talk about dating all you want.
Do you want to talk about it?
Whatever you want.
I'm down. Do you watch Love Island?
No, I've watched like a few episodes.
Like this season?
No.
Oh, okay. I was really hoping we could talk
something
about
in Australia. I saw like an Australian thing for like a few episodes.
Well, you should watch this season just because there is an Israeli guy on the show, Elon Bibas. And unfortunately, he's been getting so much hate. I mean, it's not surprising, but it really conflates this idea that, just because I'm, anti-Zionist doesn't mean I'm anti-Jewish. But I would say that everything on social media that I've seen after this man has walked into the villa on the show is totally going against what everyone says, because they're automatically assuming online that he's an IDF soldier because he posted a photo in Israel, that he is a Zionist from a political standpoint.
He's Israeli?
He has Israeli background, obviously. His name's Elon.
Oh, he didn't grow up in Israel?
No, he's Canadian.
Okay.
Moved to Miami and now walked into this villa, and there's a Palestinian woman on the show, and they're seen like kissing, and people online are just upset. How dare they let a Zionist on this show? How dare they let him kiss this girl? Like, the Western media is totally feeding into this narrative that like people can't even just human to human like connect, you know? So yeah, you should watch it. It's really it's unfortunate to see all of the backlash, but it proves the point that I do believe, personally, I believe that anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism. What do you think about that, Daniel?
I try not to get political, but in my mind, there is no distinction between Zionism and Judaism. I don't see or understand how you can be anti-Zionist without being anti-Jewish. I don't understand how, like, to me, it's one and the same. It does, like, that's it, you know?
Yeah, that's all you need to say. Listen, I completely agree with you. It's going to be interesting to see what unfolds in this season of Love Island, and then what unfolds in the world right now. But yeah, we don't need to get much deeper into it. I was hopeful you'd seen the show and that we could talk about it, but now you'll have to go home and watch it and let me know.
Yeah, I got some
let me know
homework.
what you think. Yeah, exactly. But no, let's talk about dating though, because I think it is interesting, like being so successful as you have been. I always like to know like a guy's perspective on dating a woman that is also very career oriented. Like, can that work? And when it comes to you and like your dating experiences, like what do you look for? Is it career? Is it religion? Is it personality? Like what really matters to a very successful like entrepreneur like yourself?
I would say that career is one of the least things to me that matters.
Interesting. Okay.
I think that I want someone. So 2 things I look for immediately that like are non-starters are, can I be sexually attracted to someone and intellectually attracted to someone, right? So they have to be smart. Like I have to appreciate them on that level. But I think ambition is something that is also attractive to me. But ambition to me in the context of a career doesn't mean like monetary success. You could be a teacher and be so passionate about what you do. And I would love, and I would really respect that about someone. I think someone who doesn't, goes hand in hand with passion, but like someone who doesn't have passions is probably not someone that I can vibe with or respect or would see myself sharing a life with, because I'm obviously that on many levels. But I think that to me, above of career, I look more so towards like, what are the components of what is a healthy relationship? And to me, it's like, has someone done the self-work? Are they, what's their relationship with their family? What's their relationship with their friends? What's their relationship with themselves? Are they emotionally intelligent? Or can they speak about how do they handle conflict? Like, I think if I have those two things I mentioned first, like all of that stuff matters the most when you actually, once you have a connection with someone, once you do vibe, once you have all these other things that you need to get into a relationship. I think those things are, to me, because I have done all of that work, and it's like I can't be with someone who hasn't, it's just not going to work. And I think most people haven't. So that's, it's hard to find the complete package of like what I'm looking for, and someone who, it's funny because like most women say just because they feel the emotions more than men, they're automatically more emotionally intelligent. But I find that like just in general, most people just simply haven't done the self-work to actually be able to understand their emotions and communicate them in a kind of like calm way and show up in a relationship where you're able to, see the other person and give them space and all these other things. Kind of rambling, but.
So when you say self-work, like what does that look like to you? Like what is the type of self-work that you've done on yourself?
The type of self-work I've done, I've done a lot of things.
Like, does that mean therapy? Does that mean
therapy?
Yeah.
I mean, there's cognitive therapy, there's somatic therapy, there's Reiki like Brittany, there's energy.
Has Brittany Reiki'd you?
Yeah, a few times.
No way.
There's tons of different stuff, right? There's, unpacking, your understanding your attachment styles. There's understanding, your patterns that you grew through, childhood development. What was your, the understanding, like the bond with your parents and how that impacted you and all your trauma surrounding that. And I mean, there's so many things. Yeah. So I've done a ton of work on all those things. And through that, I feel like I can be able to show up in a relationship more as the goal of being my authentic self and not as the subconscious patterns that are driving how I react to things.
So when did you start doing this self-work? Because how old are you, Daniel?
32.
Okay. So do you feel like this was a post-30 realization
I think like
for you?
2.5 years ago.
Okay, so yeah, like 30-ish.
Yeah.
I don't know if men have the same like Saturn return as women do. But Brittany and I talked about this last week, and like from the age of 27 to 30, women go through what's called your Saturn return. Yeah. It's like the most changing your life, transformative like period of life. So I'm at the end of my Saturn return. But yeah, I wonder if that's the same for men. I don't know if
definitely
it's gender
the age
related.
of 29 was the most like my world got flipped upside down.
Wow. Okay, do tell. Can you share?
I had a, call it, spiritual awakening during this year, which is what was the catalyst for me, wanting to go inward for the first time, wanting to face all my shit that I had been suppressing for so long, and then once you unpack, face those things and work through them, well, all the things that you want in life might change, So I was able to ask myself for the first time, like, why am are these things that still align with me now that I understand, like, once I'm a bit more connected to myself, like, you go from being asleep in the world to being conscious. Like, that's high level, like what it is. Therefore, like, how you see the world changes, your relationships with people change. And, there's many components to it. So, that was the year that I kind of stepped back from work. And yeah, there's a ton of change going on, but it all kind of, the catalyst for that was that, call it, spiritual awakening, and really putting a huge emphasis on going internally. So yeah.
Do you think that's because you had more time since you had stopped working, or?
I was still working at that time.
Oh, you were? Okay.
Yeah.
So what led to because I feel like there's always a reason that you decide to look inward. Maybe it's a breakup. Maybe it's you're quitting your job and you have all this time.
Pain is great for growth, for sure.
It is. Yeah. A breakup always will do it to you.
Yeah. Heartbreak is a great thing that can catalyze growth. But, I would say for me, it was, call it, a near-death experience of someone close to me. And that was what made me reprioritize what's most important in life. And that was the start of it all.
It's interesting to me that you kind of talk about how women expect, like, oh, we're women, we're intuitive and emotional, so we're obviously more emotionally intelligent than you as a guy. But you're kind of saying the opposite, that you've gone through like dating or whatever it may be and found that women aren't actually as in tune emotionally as they may seem.
I don't think it's a women. I just don't like the women, especially I see on podcasts, TikTok, and like women have this like condescending tone about like men. Oh, men don't. And for me, it's like I look at that and it's like these women are completely emotionally inept. Like they don't know. Like they're also like, yeah. So I just think it's most people in this world are emotionally sick. Because why do I think that? Most relationships are horrible. They're horrific. Most relationships are horrific. An emotionally sick person would only get into a relationship with an emotionally sick person. So you bring two together and that, they stay. So I just think most people haven't done a lot of most people aren't living a life in alignment with themselves. I mean, it's a constant like journey to do that, to do so. But I don't think it's a woman-man thing is my point. I just think it's like a most people thing. Yeah.
But I mean, that is so true on TikTok. Like you can go through waves and waves of videos of women just bashing men. And yeah, dating is really fucking hard. But I think to consistently blame men as the problem of this like societal issue of dating right now is harmful. And I've seen a lot of my friends fall like victim to that and victim to this like cyclical social media buzzword of like the guy sucks. Like, yeah, because I don't think we take accountability as much as we should.
I mean, you're only going to get into a shitty situation if you put yourself in that.
Right.
Well, if you're, if you have a lot of these tools that you can learn and whatnot, you won't get into a relationship. Hopefully you'll have a better chance of not getting into a relationship with someone who has these attributes, at least at that time. Right. Yeah. So it takes two.
It takes two to tango. Yeah, no, I agree.
And that's kind of like the overarching point at least I see in the context of dating. I mean, I'm not perfect, obviously, but I've gotten into relationships with people who, weren't emotionally as intelligent as I would have thought during the beginning, or had a lot of these other, issues. But yeah.
Well, I think with social media too, it's very easy to see things from the outside and at least I was like this in my earlier 20s of just being like more attracted to the physical than the emotional. And then you go through a relationship and you realize like those qualities aren't there. And especially for like an intuitive woman like myself, like I need that emotional connection. And I think most people do. And yeah, I think social media has definitely made that a barrier to finding the right partner. But, that's my opinion, I guess. I did have another question for you about, what you're looking for in your next relationship. Is Judaism important to you? Like to the point where like you want Jewish children, and would you marry a non-Jewish woman?
My non-negotiable is raising my kids Jewish for sure.
Okay.
So I would marry someone who wasn't Jewish if they were committed to converting and raising my kids Jewish.
You would want them to convert?
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Like my last relationship, she wasn't Jewish. But she actually really loved Judaism. She loved Shabbat. She loved the Jewish community. She loved especially the community aspect to it. She was really interested in learning more. And, I really like that. In an ideal world, I am with someone that's Jewish, but I think with all of these things I'm looking for in a partner, to add have to be Jewish on top is just.
You think you're asking for too much?
I don't know. Seems tough, but yeah,
I know it's hard.
I absolutely would. I would love to be with someone who is Jewish. I mean, it just makes everything so much easier, right? I think you instantly have an understanding of each other and the culture and all this other stuff that someone who's not Jewish just doesn't have or whatnot. So there's nothing more in life my parents would want than for me to be with someone who's Jewish.
Yeah, I was going to say, answer this question as if your mom and dad are listening to this.
Yeah.
It's interesting because I feel like Judaism can be very tribal. Like, there's less than 1% of us in the world. We have to be together. We have to make Jewish babies, which like, don't get me wrong. Like I do firmly believe that, but I also think, I don't know. There are some things that like maybe you have to compromise on. I don't know if religion is one that I would compromise on, but if someone was open to like, Jewish children and had a deep understanding of the culture and had been to Israel and was open to it, like, I feel like that is something we should be as Jews a little bit more open to, because we are so secluded as a community, which makes sense, right? We've only had each other to get through these extremely hard times, but it's nice to have some allies too, and people that can genuinely understand. And like, there are people out there that want to be a part of the community and part of us because we're special.
Totally.
So being inclusive, I think that's my point. And I'm trying to be more inclusive in general. And
I've met numerous people who've converted on their own without even doing it just for the relationship. So it's like, if someone feels a connection to the religion and the community and all those things, and they want to do it for themselves, like, why wouldn't I want to, be with them and whatnot? And so, yeah, that's kind of how I see it.
I have just like a bit more of a business question, kind of getting away from the dating stuff. But if you were going to start an online platform today, like so much has changed with social media since you started RapTV. What would you do differently? And like, how has the algorithm changed? Like, can you share some tips on like what you would do if you're starting a new business, or like for your podcast, for example? What strategy is going to be different for the podcast than what you use for RapTV?
So when I started RapTV, the landscape of social media was night and day to what it is today. Like it's not even like, it's just a different game, right? So when I started RapTV, the feed was still chronological. That alone is the
and
difference.
Now today,
in everything.
It's just a mess. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So if you were a small account, it was nearly impossible to grow organically. Super hard. Like you had to get on the explore page, and there was a whole game around that, or or invest in buying shout outs from all these other big pages. And was a huge way how I grew many of these accounts early on. But now, even for the podcast, it's simple. It's good content wins. That's it.
What about consistency?
I mean, that's a huge element.
Like, how much does that really matter if you're not putting out quality content, though?
I think it's a combination of the two. You need, I think, volume, consistency, and good content. If you do all of that, you're gonna have success. Like, but not just good content. It's understanding, like, there's obviously nuance to it, like understanding, who's your target audience, what's the niche, what's the messaging, or is it, all these other, how can you create a strong hook with all your, like, all of that stuff. Not just saying, oh, my content looks good. So I think that's simply the name of the game. I mean, even with RapTV, they're posting 30 times a day just on the one Instagram account. And, because it has a big audience, the big get bigger because more people share it, more people see it, etc. And I think Instagram and all of the other platforms now more than ever want to incentivize smaller creators to grow. So I think that they are, it's easier now than ever for anyone to grow an audience.
So what advice do you have? I mean, now we're competitors in the podcast space. Just kidding. What advice do you have for me or for someone that might be listening who's starting something to try to find their Jewish voice in the world today and bring positivity to our mission, our pride, our people? What kind of advice could you offer?
Someone who is trying to find their Jewish voice. Yeah. That's really interesting. I think that, especially growing up, I had a hard time understanding, like, there's multiple ways to have a relationship with God. And it's like, unless you're doing it this way, like, what is the relationship with God? And I think that, like, now I have a really good understanding that everyone has their own unique relationship with God. And it doesn't always have to be just simply in a religious way. I think there's a spiritual element to it. There is religious. And I think whatever someone's relationship is with that, I think that's amazing. And I think that's where it kind of like starts and stops. I think, like, people need to find that curiosity to want more internally. That's what I think. So it's hard to give advice for someone, because especially me, I'm still on my own path of, like, what is my relationship with God? Like, that's constantly evolving. What is my relationship with Judaism and all the other, not just the community aspect, but like the religious aspect, and my, desire to learn more within that, and certain sects of that with Kabbalah and this and that. So I think that it's everyone's personal journey to kind of embark on.
There's so many themes that come about when I interview people, and a lot of it, what I'm realizing from our conversation and just from my own experience with Judaism, is we're young and we're taught to grow up this way and go to Hebrew school and, like, do the holidays, and we assimilate. We're the only Jew on our basketball team on this and that, and we feel, like, ashamed of that. Or at least I did a lot of the time. I don't know if you ever felt that way, but I was, like, a little bit embarrassed to be that one Jewish girl on the basketball team. And, I remember being, like, made fun of for having a big nose, and people just saying, like, anti-Semitic tropes to me throughout my entire life. So I think because of that, I felt really embarrassed to outwardly, like, present myself Jewish, even though my last name, says it all. And it's like later in life, so many things happen, and you really start to figure out, like, who you are at your core. And maybe that goes into, like, self-work and being more confident. And I don't know, it's like I always thought I was confident, but not in my Judaism. And that's something I felt later in life, as a now, like, 29-year-old. So yeah, that's just a theme that's been coming up. Like, I feel like most people kind of, like, reject religion in their youth, and then
find it later on. To me, a huge element of being a Jew is being a fighter. To me. And, having that fire, even you look back, like, Jews have been prosecuted for a very long time. It's not just like, in the Holocaust or whatever, now fighting, what's going on since October 7th. So I think that after October 7th, a lot of it brought out the fire and the fight in a lot of Jews who, for the first time, were proud to publicly be Jewish. And certainly for me, that brought it out more than ever. You know, I mean, I'm certainly a fighter. I definitely have that fire in me. I've even mentioned like, when someone tries to kind of like push you down, like I'm going to try and push against it more than ever. And I think October 7 was like, at least in my adult lifetime, the first time where I've seen Jews be so public about their opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
Since then.
Yeah, because that's for our generation the first time something so became brutal real. Happened.
Yeah, I mean,
like
first time, Kanye West is making songs, Hail Hitler, and it's just it's pretty crazy. You know, even yesterday there was like some, I don't know, rapper, rock and roll guy calling for broadcasted on BBC, calling for the death of everyone in the IDF, of chants, people in the crowds, thousands of people chanting death, death. It's fucking insane. So it's like, yeah, if you're not a fighter at this point for your people, then like, for me, it's like, I almost get this kind of like superiority complex, but it's like, are you how are you Jewish? Like, you're not going to stand for your people.
I think that's a big question nowadays, especially with like the election in New York City for mayor. Like there's a lot.
Totally.
We don't need to get fully into that, but I think it's just like, have you not seen what's been going on the last few years? Like, how dare you? How dare you let this happen to us as people? Like, is this not how the Holocaust happened? We're just reverting back in time, it seems like. So yeah, it's very emotional, very upsetting. You bring up an interesting point about like music and how you can use that for the good and also like not positive things, like with Kanye West and with this rapper in the UK. Did you ever experience any of that when you were doing more like on the ground for RapTV? And like, how would that work with like, let's say Kanye's posting something anti-Semitic, like would you promote that on RapTV?
Like I said, the last few years I've been pretty involved in like the content moderation of what's going on. But I know at one point we made the team made an internal kind of stance to just not post about anything. Like they try not to post anything too politically.
Yeah.
But
when
related.
It comes to music, like obviously Kanye is one of the biggest rappers in the world.
But it's like also, there's something about posting something, giving attention to something that's so negative.
Right.
So.
Yeah, I'm just curious if that would get any like airtime on RapTV, just because he is in the music. I
think they take each piece of thing try to use their judgment on each individual thing going on.
Awesome. Well, Daniel, that's all I got for you today.
All right.
I think
we hit a bunch of different topics.
I know, this is great. And the one thing I will end this with is, thank God we are in Miami, Florida. I don't know what I would do if I was in any other city right now with, what's going on in the world. And it makes me want to build this podcast and be a bigger voice for people that may be in a city where there's no other Jews around them. Like, I feel for those people. I was living in New York for 5 years, and while New York is the largest population of Jews outside of Israel, I still felt isolated. I still felt lonely because of all of the protests I would walk by on a daily basis. So I feel for people that are Jewish, that are living in small towns and don't have a community. I'm here for you as a voice, and hopefully can make people feel a little bit more welcome and connected, even from far away. So that's my goal with Friends of Kayla. But Daniel, thanks for being here. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you for having me. It was a fun conversation.
Yeah, of course.